Gold in the Black Hills. These words flashed over the telegraph wires August 9th, 1874, when lonesome Charlie Reynolds arrived at Fort Laramie with news of a big strike in the Black Hills of South Dakota. This set off a rush of prospectors that needed transportation from the Sidney, Nebraska train station to Deadwood, South Dakota. The Sidney-Deadwood stage line was formed and traveled through Fort Robinson and the Red Cloud Indian Agency. 90 years later, two men living in Crawford, Nebraska, 3 miles east of Fort Robinson, formed the idea of hauling passengers on a stagecoach on the historical Fort Robinson State Park, and the Fort Robinson stage line was born.
Well, my name's Vernon Rocky. I live in Lincoln. This is Doris and Merle Kilgore. They live in Oakland, Nebraska. And we had an idea in 1963 to start a stagecoach at Fort Robinson, Nebraska, to bring tourists from Fort Robinson to Crawford. We were at the coffee shop at Tryon's Coffee Shop one morning, and in fact, we were there several mornings, and we talked about tourism in western Nebraska, and I don't know who mentioned it, but we thought maybe we ought to run a stagecoach between Fort Robinson and Crawford. And I remember that morning we finished our coffee and we all went back to work, and Merle called me and said, "Were you serious about that?" And I said, well, yeah, I guess I could be. And that kind of started everything rolling. So we didn't know anything about stagecoaches or horses, or we just knew we had an idea. And so we began the search for a stagecoach. Is this how you remember all of this? Yeah. So I wrote some letters to Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer in Hollywood, and they had a stagecoach, but it was pretty expensive, if I remember right.
$7,500.
Yeah, something like that. And we felt we couldn't afford that, so I wrote to Pioneer Village.
Yeah.
We wrote to Pioneer Village, and they didn't have a stagecoach. We wrote to just a individual in Colorado, and he had built a box with some wheels on it. He called it a stagecoach. And but the man at Pioneer Village told us about a gentleman in Illinois, around Chicago, that built stagecoaches. The guy in the Chicago area was our best place to talk about a stagecoach, and he said he'd build one. And so we hired him, and he began to build a coach. And so we then started working on what it meant to have a stagecoach. Do you remember anything about finding the horses? He had the used car dealership, Tommy's Car Lot. Anyway, he knew a lot about horses. He bought and sold horses. And if I remember right, he found us horses, and one team was up on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, and when we got them, they didn't even know how to eat oats. We had to mix molasses with them and crush them and to get the horses to even eat oats. But he helped us find horses. I remember one time Bob said, we can't run one of the horses, Jack or Jill, one of them, because they were sick.
Yeah, they had some kind of bump.
Neck?
Yeah, we had to cut open it.
Oh, I'd forgotten that part. What I remember mostly is he would look the horses over in the morning, and he could tell when one wasn't feeling well. And then we didn't run that one. But I had forgotten about that neck thing.
Yeah. Well, we paid him 50 cents an hour, and he knew everything about horses.
We didn't have the knowledge, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I think Bob helped build Highway 20 through that area with horses.
Yeah.
I think I heard that one time.
He had a way of telling the horses to start up and go. He whistle. And we were just around talking, and two of the little kids were up and sitting up there. And they evidently knew that. And so they whistled, and off they went. When Bob, he had to grab the line. And one time, the car drove up to the going to ride on the stage. The boy got out of the back end and just ran towards the door. And Ed could tell if he'd have run into them horses, he'd have been kicked.
Yeah.
Long run. And Ed actually jumped off the coach and stopped that boy.
And protected the boy. Yeah. Horses' names. I can read them here.
Oh, Jack and Jill.
But I only have 4 of them. Jack and Jill, Jake and Jane,
Jim and Jerry.
Jim and
Yeah.
Jerry. You're right.
That was the Palominos.
They all started with J.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how Bob and the horses communicated,
Yeah.
like the whistle, or he'd say some other words, and all the horses, although we bought them from other places, it wasn't long before Bob taught them their new name.
Yeah.
And that's how he communicated with them, and he could communicate with them as well as us. We got the harness, we got the horses, and of course, when we ordered the stagecoach, we had to have money to give the guy the down payment.
Yeah.
And I remember when we went over to the bank and talked to Eldon Spray
Oh, yeah.
and asked him for a loan. And he asked us what we were going to do with the money, and we said, buy a stagecoach. And he said, no, we won't loan any money for a stagecoach. So we went to Don Williams at the drugstore
Yeah.
and borrowed $1,000. We went to Frank Frymuth, the dentist, and borrowed $500.
Yeah.
And then we went to Al Jordan that had the cleaning business
Oh,
right next to L.B. Murphy,
I forgot about that.
and we borrowed $500 from him. Then we went back to the bank and told him we had some down payment, and he loaned us the rest. So we did not have a dime invested in the stagecoach, but we ordered one. We had little side problems as we were trying to develop this thing. I remember the liability insurance that we had trouble with. We wrote to Lloyd's of London, we wrote to insurance companies around Crawford and Shadron, we wrote to insurance companies in Denver trying to get liability, and nobody wanted to.
You just mentioned horses, and
Yeah. They backed off when we got
Yeah.
the horses. But we kept trying, and of course the state of Nebraska wanted us to have insurance to protect them in case something happened. Well, anyway, we just kept trying, and finally we got some insurance, and it was enough to satisfy the state of Nebraska. But it wasn't easy getting insurance for us. Do you remember anything about it that would be interesting?
one of the guys that we got it with ended up in prison.
Yeah, because he took our premium, but didn't turn it into the company,
No.
and it finally caught up with him. And you're right, he ended up in prison. Then we began to work on the first day run. and that was an election year.
Well, we had to order that. We had to get that stage by a certain date.
That's
And
true.
He didn't have it. He had the body, but he didn't have the other stuff.
That's true. Because when we got the coach,
He wouldn't-
Neil Daniels went and he was hauling,
Leo. Yeah.
Leo Daniels was hauling sheep to New Jersey, and he told you, I think you were the one that arranged it, told you that he would drop by and pick up this coach. And there were so many people doing things like that for free that
Yeah.
I'm sure wouldn't happen today. But anyway, he brought the stagecoach, and you and I opened the back of that semi-trailer, and about the only thing that resembled a coach was the body. And the body was pretty good on the
Oh,
outside.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Yeah,
Painted and everything.
yeah. But the inside was not finished.
No.
Nor did they have good wheels and good axles and just a bunch of stuff in there. And we took it down to your company's warehouse. Is that what you'd call it, a warehouse?
Well, yeah.
We stored it there, and we began to put it together. And you're right, we had to have it done by a certain day because we had invited the governor to come and ride it on the first day. And it was an election year, and Frank Morrison was running for re-election, and so he agreed to come. Mrs. Cook,
Yeah.
Harold Cook from Agate Ranch, she agreed to come. And a representative from the Game Commission, I think his name was Garrett or something, he's from Scottsbluff,
I know.
and he was going to come. And
We had the mayor, Bill.
yeah, Bill Hudson from Crawford was the mayor, and he was going to ride it. And then we had Howard Dodd was going to ride shotgun.
He paid for that seat.
They had a little. I don't remember doing this, but there was an auction.
Yeah,
For the seat.
every week the paper.
Is that where it come out?
Yeah. And I think Howard spent $60.
Yeah, close to $60 to ride the first run.
Yeah.
But I was happy to see him because he's an old timer, history buff for that area.
He made these.
He's the one that made the vest.
Yeah.
Yeah, is this the one with the hole in it? The bullet hole?
No.
The one I had had the bullet hole in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. He was quite a guy. Anyway, we hired people to finish the coach, and I remember the day that we set the body down on the carriage. We had the body hoisted up to the ceiling in your building, and on each corner there was a metal brace that held the webbing.
Yeah.
And then we set the coach down on that webbing, and the four corners just bent in and broke the cross member. And that guy in Chicago had built the cross members out of pine instead of oak. But Jim Soyster said he'd fix it, so he had a blacksmith shop in Crawford, and we hooked the carriage. We hoisted the body back up, and we hooked the carriage onto your pickup. And on the way over to the blacksmith shop, the wheel broke off.
Axle broke.
He'd made the axles out of pine.
Yeah.
Then we had the job of finding axles, finding wheels that fit, and you took that job on, thank goodness. But you searched around farmers and ranchers, and you found buggy wheels, you found wagon wheels, the big wide ones that wouldn't look good on a coach, and you found all kinds of wheels, and finally you came up with axles and wheels that matched the coach, and but one of them, the tire wouldn't stay on, and we had to wire it on. And here the day of the first run was approaching fast.
Yes.
And but we got it all together, and we wanted it together a few days ahead so Bob could drive the horses and drive the wagon around, or the stage around. And that morning of the run, he had run the freight wagon behind those horses for hours to wear them down,
Yeah.
so they wouldn't be feisty when we made the first run
That's
with
right.
all the dignitaries on there. So we need to back up a little bit and tell about the difficulty we had getting a place to run.
Yeah. Beef
We-
research.
Yeah, beef research. The beef research had charge of the main part of Fort Robinson, and they were doing beef cattle research. And so we made up an easement, had Harris Snyder write up an easement on a piece of land 20 feet wide from Fort Robinson to Crawford. And we presented that to the beef research, and you remember their answer?
No.
It was a big no. You're right. And they said that the Nebraska Game Commission had the rights for all the bridle trails, and so they couldn't grant us an easement.
That's right.
So then we changed the name on the easement to the to the Parks Commission and presented it to them. And they said the same thing, said no, because the beef research had charge of all the land out there. So that's when I did a dumb thing. And I wrote to Congressman Martin and told him that we were going to homestead the land because it seemed like nobody owned it. And that was really dumb. That just made everybody mad. But anyway, got it worked out to where we were not going to run across the pass between Crawford and Fort Robinson. So we decided to run down through the back road by the prisoner of war camp and down through Red Cloud.
Yeah.
But the gate was locked, and the beef research people said they wouldn't unlock it, so we weren't able to go through there. But I had been calling Washington and trying to work this thing out, so the morning of our run it was still locked. And I called Washington. It was on a Saturday, and I don't know why that guy was in that office, but he was. And he said he would get it done. He'd get it open.
For one trip.
One trip. You're right. And at that time, we had operators as our telephone people, and we would pick up the phone, and she'd say, "Number, please," and we'd give them the number. And, well, one of those ladies was Ellie Ball, and she was a friend of ours. And I said, "Ellie, are you there?" And she said, yes. She was listening to our conversation. And I asked her to transfer the call to Fort Robinson. And she did that. And we got the gate open. So we had a luncheon at the sale barn.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where the governor was, and Mrs. Cook and all the people were there and had a luncheon. And then they boarded the stagecoach.
Well, they let school out.
Yes, they did. They let all the rural schools out. And they let the school in Crawford out. There was probably 3,000 people on Main Street that day.
Yeah, and we went, there was those kids on the top of a convertible.
Yeah.
And when we got alongside, they let out a yell. "Hey!"
Yeah.
The horses took off.
The horses took off.
And old Dodd, he restored and he grabbed all four of the lines.
From Bob.
And Bob, there he was. He couldn't do a thing. And it didn't go too far. And you got out and through the line off of a horse?
No, I don't think so. I think it was Neil Rising and the other Rising that were outriders, and they brought
Yeah.
the horses down. But anyway, they stopped the horses from. I thought they ran quite a ways, but you told me that they only got like a half a block or so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, they got them down. We went to the gate and it was open, and we got through. But we had arranged for a holdup. We got some people to hold up the coach, and you were on top, and you threw the when the bandits came, you threw the
Money.
the what?
Money.
Yeah, the money box. You threw
Yeah.
the money box off. There's a picture in the book showing that. And we had given the governor a watch, and we'd given him a wallet that the bandits took from him. And the governor was a real tall man. I think he was over 6 foot. And when he raised his hands up, it was just a great big guy, you know. His
Good
hands, I think,
picture.
went as high as a coach.
Yeah.
And he was robbed, and all of KDUH TV was there, the World Herald was there, and unknown to us, the superintendent of the park,
Yeah, John Kurtz.
John Kurtz, had arranged for him to dress up like the Lone Ranger,
Yeah.
and his assistant superintendent was on Tonto. When he saved the governor and turned to leave, the KUH TV cameraman stepped out in front of them, and Tonto took about 4 crow hops and bucked him off the horse. But they went on to Fort Robinson, and they had a meeting there, and the governor made several speeches.
When we
Well-
started that cookout, you cooked. What did we have that for? Didn't we have stew?
Well, that's what you told me the last time we were together. You told me about a stew, and I had forgotten about that. But
You have to ask Bernie. She cooked it.
yeah, it was I'm sure a beef stew with potatoes and carrots and all that stuff, and then the coffee pot.
Oh, yeah.
People really liked the coffee that we cooked over the fire. What would happen is that I would call out to Fort Robinson about 4 o'clock in the afternoon and find out how many people were going.
We had to have 10.
Was it 10?
I think so.
Okay. We had to have the 10 people before we felt it was feasible to do it. And then after we found out that we were going to go, I would of course call you, because you were the one that did the driving. You on the hay rack. You had to go get the horses all harnessed and get them up. And then I would call my wife, and she would start preparing the meal. And then after work, we'd go get our cowboy clothes on. And I would go get the food and the singer, and you would go get the horses,
Yeah.
and I'd go on out to the camp area and start the fire, get the coffee going, warm up the meal, and you would get the passengers and the hay rack. And I remember with the hay rack, we insisted on it being built with some brakes, hydraulic brakes. And we had 1 team of horses on it. And you would bring them out there, and we'd just feed them.
That was about, what was it, about 2 miles out there?
Oh, it had to be, yeah.
3.
It was a long ways. It took you,
It's quite a ways.
what, 45 minutes to get
Yeah.
there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then after they had their meal, we'd sit around the campfire and drink coffee and sing songs.
Yeah.
And we had Mrs. Carlson sang for us.
Yeah.
And then there was 2 ball boys. Anyway, they sang for us. And then the guy from Crawford, that, or excuse me, the guy from Shadron that run a music shop over there. He came over a lot of times and sang for us.
I forget that.
Yeah. But anyway, that started the second year we were there,
Yeah,
and that's still going at Fort Robinson, the cookouts.
yeah.
And of course, the stagecoach is still going.
The cookout is, they don't go to the same place we went.
No, that's too far. They
Yeah.
go down on Cherry Creek, I think, by the prisoner war camp and
No.
Red Cloud.
They are now,
Yeah,
yeah,
but we went up on Soldier Creek up
yeah,
on James Ranch.
that's right.
Yeah. You know, the things we did with the signs were real interesting. What was that? Is that a cooling tower? that
Yeah.
we
We tore it, I tore it down, and all that wood was available. And I made these signs for Robinson Stage.
ride a real stagecoach,
Yeah.
Fort Robinson, Nebraska, I remember. And you cut all those little wooden strips out, didn't you? And then we nailed them on the panel.
Yeah,
And you cut all of those out on your table saw, I think. didn't
yeah,
you? And well, they were all redwood, weren't they?
yes,
Because that redwood, it was a cooling tower for a big generator for
yeah.
Nebraska Power. Or was that Consumers Power at that
You
time?
know, it was consumers, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that water run all that wood, so it had to be redwood. But we would take them around different places, and we got a little aggressive, didn't we?
Yeah. If it looked good, we put it there.
Yeah.
And that one out by Harrison.
That was the Rom Brothers Ranch,
Oh, okay.
and we put one near their lane, and they had a lawyer write to us and said they didn't mind us putting the sign there, but they have a snow problem with the snow drifting in there, and they'd ask us to come down and move it, and of course we did. But I thought it was pretty nice of them not to just
Yeah.
tell us to
Yeah.
get off their land, but they let us stay there.
Well, they all knew what we were, the stagecoach and all.
You know, it was amazing how people all around that country knew what we were doing, and they were all for us.
Yeah,
They were all interested in us getting that done. They wanted to see it. Yeah, we went on several trips to different parades.
yeah,
One of the highlights was the Lincoln Nebraska Land Parade, and in fact, that was the first Nebraska Land celebration in Nebraska. Now it's in North Platte. It was in Lincoln first. So you were there. I didn't go on that trip.
no, I drove your car, so,
Yeah, that's right. You drove my car and pulled the stagecoach on a trailer.
in fact, Governor Morrison excited us and honked at us. We had to stop and talk to him. And there was, I'm sure, a license plate.
Well, the license plate was Dawes County, and
Yeah.
so he remembered us from the time he
Yeah, he left that coach on the lawn of the Capitol overnight.
You pulled the coach down there, and then Bob took the horses
Yeah.
in his truck or somebody's truck, or
Bob,
maybe it was Rising's
and
truck.
boy went with him.
I see.
Then
Another
we went to Davenport,
Davenport, Nebraska.
and I remember Bob was concerned that that horse, Jane, would act in the parade. He had me to run along behind the crowd, and in case that Jane would act up, but Jane didn't, and we were all right. They wanted to pet one horse every time people would come and say, he'd pet the horse, They'd always pick out Jane, and Jane was, well, you had those nuns at one time.
I don't know that
Catholic
story.
nuns.
You went to, the nuns were there, and this one nun went around and petted those things, and I think it was that skirt she was wearing. And
Their habit kind of scared them.
Yeah.
Before we close, there are two ladies that need to have recognition. They are Bernie Rocky and Doris Kilgore. Looking at a stage station logbook, one would find Doris on every page, indicating her manning the stage station 99% of the time, selling tickets and souvenirs. If kitchens had logbooks, there would be Bernie's name on every page, developing and designing dishes and menus. Baking powder biscuits, honey butter, coleslaw, and baked beans all came from her. Two guys with a wild idea of a stagecoach could have been stopped in its infancy by these two ladies. Instead, they were at our backs, spending countless hours giving us support. Because of them, Fort Robinson State Park has a cookout and stagecoach that still operates today. We urge you to visit this beautiful, historic park that claims western Nebraska its home.
Besides the Lincoln Nebraska Land Parade, the stagecoach was in numerous Crawford 4th of July parades as well as parades in other towns. The Old West Trail Foundation arranged for the stage to be featured on Kellogg's cereal boxes of Fruit Loops, Sugar Pops, Stars, Cocoa Krispies, Sugar Frosted Flakes, Sugar Smacks, and Apple Jacks, giving away grub stake tickets for free stagecoach rides at Fort Robinson.